Okay, hello everyone. We are the Association for Clinical Counselors in BC. We have 8,000 counseling members over, and we had such an outcry of people wanting to help. And so this is our response. This is one of our responses. There's many things going on behind the scenes. And this is our way of connecting really important information to the people of our province. So that's what this is. Um, and I have got, I think you are spotlighted somewhere on the screen. I've got Alyson Jones and I've got Gisela. Oh, your last name's not there. I'm so sorry. And and both very seasoned RCCs with decades of experience, psychological first aid, everything that meets this moment in time. And so I want to take a moment to acknowledge where I'm coming from today. I'm coming from the lands of the Lekwungen speaking people, known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. And I acknowledge we are coming from all over the province. And so take that moment as well. This is being recorded and we will be sharing it with all of you. It will get published rather quickly. And let's just get started here.
Okay.
So, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the impact of what has happened and the complexity of what is going on as well. So, what are some common emotional and physical reactions after a moment like this, and how can we recognize that in ourselves and in other people?
So I'm just going to thank you, Nikki, and I just want to thank BCACC for supporting this webinar and reaching out and responding so quickly. And I really appreciate that support. Like it speaks to what we need right now, which is community connection. And one of the things is when you've experienced a tragedy and something so significant and so large, there is healing that happens when we come together. And so I just also want to acknowledge every single person that even if I can't see your faces right now, I can feel your hearts. And I just really, really want to thank you for taking the time and coming here and showing up and being a part of this conversation today and this community. And if you have any strong emotions during this process, please know that that's okay. And it's allowed. Like I'm even having some right now as I speak, because I know how important this is and I know how powerful this is. And my heart really goes out to the Filipino community and the organizers and the people that were present and impacted by the events of last Saturday. And so I just want to take a moment and say that, we're thinking of you and this community is together. One of the things, the way I'd like to start this out, and we'll talk a bit about some of the things that we can expect or see or feel, but I want to start out by talking about the word compassion, because people often forget that the word passion itself actually means suffering, and it is Latin for suffering. And so when we're passionate about things, sometimes we suffer for them. When we're passionate about people, so there is suffering in this world, but the word compassion is common suffering. And what that means is that we're carrying this together, right? So I want to know that we're all here. We're all connected by our compassion. And in these hard times, when we see some of the worst pictures of humanity, we also see the best of humanity, which is compassion and connection. So I just want to start out and lay that out there for people, because it helps give us a context and it helps gives us a structure to understand some of these things and to support each other. Because one of the things we're going to be talking about today is sometimes the feelings that can come up can be very overpowering, and they can be anger, of course, sadness, fear, frustration, helplessness, right? And so by having compassion, by carrying this together, that's a step forward, and it helps us feel a little less helpless because we're doing something. and we're doing something together. So that is one of the healing things is taking action and doing something, which is why I, again, I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of this today, because this is helping heal all of us involved. And it's also helping, hopefully, spread some tips and thoughts and compassion out there. So, Gisela, did you want to say anything?
Well, there's really no words that can describe the pain that as a community we're all feeling, as well as in particular the Filipino community. I think that what has happened has shocked us all. And I tag along on what you just said about the importance of compassion. And if I could add something to it, is just that it's going to take us time, right? It's going to take us some good time to be able to process what has happened, time to heal. I think, yeah, I can speak a little bit louder, maybe there. I was just saying that it's going to take us time to heal. And we have to make sure that we are respecting our own paces, that we are coming together, um, and that we are also reminding each other that we don't have to do this alone. I think the reason why we decided, and BCACC decided to, as a society, put resources together and support for everyone that wants to have some help processing this event, is that we don't have to do it alone. That we can tap on the community to do it together, right? And so, yeah, if going back to the initial question about, emotional reactions, Alyson, you mentioned sadness, you mentioned anger, you mentioned shock. Um, I have been hearing from people also feeling a lot of numbness, like feeling nothing, or a sense of disconnection, and a sense of confusion, because really, as I was saying, there's no words for explaining a senseless tragedy like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things in us, our natural reaction as humans is, and I want to let people know there's no right or wrong, right? Reactions. There's no right or wrong. So if you're having that feeling of numbness, don't feel like there's something wrong with me, or if you're feeling yourself, crying just so easily, don't think there's anything wrong with you, because there isn't, right? People process things in different ways at their own time. But understand that as humans, we have self-protective things that when we get overwhelmed or it feels too much, we take that step back. And that's not a bad thing, to take a step back when things are overwhelming and so if we can stay conscious of that, that can actually be a very good skill and a very good tool in helping us move forward. And one of the things I'm going to encourage people is, everybody has their own way of kind of self-care and the things that speak to them, right? And when we do feel overwhelmed, like one of my things is like we, you know, we're compelled to look at social media, we're compelled to watch the news to get the information, because information can alleviate anxiety. It really can. But too much information can elevate anxiety, right? So when you're finding yourself starting to tip over to that place of elevated anxiety, like it's feeling worse rather than kind of getting the pieces together to make some sense for you, take the time that you need. Go for the walk, do the art, read the book, bake the cookies, get a hug from somebody you love, whatever it is, pet your dog, right? Do the things that actually help step back from those feelings. Right. So when I was talking about common suffering, it doesn't mean we have to be suffering all the time, because we're just not as effective as helping each other then. Right. We all need our times to refuel and take a step back. So I encourage everybody, to be conscious of that, and also make room for other people. Right. And so, I don't know all the people that are involved in this webinar. I don't know how directly impacted they've been. Some may have been very directly impacted, and some may be viewing from afar, right? So, we have different elements and different experiences here. And so, it's that thing of tapping into the stuff that will also heal you wherever you are in that paradigm and wherever you are in that that picture is that and in the end, connection helps, connection with yourself and connection with others.
I'm wondering, I don't want to move you guys too fast or anything, but I am wondering if you can speak to how grief shows up differently with this kind of event, how that might differ to other losses that people have had in their lives.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, when you have something that is like a public tragedy like this, um, there's certainly similarities, but there's differences too. It's, we all experience grief. We don't get through life without grief because we're going to lose, you know, things, people that are important to us, right? And so we can understand sometimes that intimate relationship with grief and the loss of somebody that we were very connected to, right? But this is different in the sense that it's like the community, right? The community's taken a kick in the stomach. And we're experiencing these feelings, for some people that maybe don't have the direct connection with the people that were there. And then sometimes it's confusing and it's like, should I even feel this way? The other people that were there, they must be suffering so much more. Like, do I even have a right to feel this way? And you do have a right to feel this way because that's the thing. We are connected through our vulnerability. We're connected through our compassion. So whatever you're feeling is an okay thing to feel, and it's the right thing for you to be feeling. But if it's too much or you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to ask for help and support as well, right? And one of the things we want to talk about too is if you are assisting others or you're helping others, don't just assume what they need. Ask them what they need. Check in with them because what your need is, what you might feel that they need might actually be different than what they need. Right. So out of respect, we really want to check in with people. It's also okay if they don't know, right? It's okay if they don't know what they need, but it's a respectful thing to do to be able to check with each other around that.
Yeah. Sometimes what I've heard other, like especially people that are very close to the event in other events, has been more related to feeling lost because this is it was a communal event. It involved many, many people. And so you grieve as a collective, but you're a little bit feeling lost and confused on how this affects you as an individual and how to express your pain individually, and I agree, like there's a lot of need to be gentle to yourself, gentle to the people around you, and checking in about what you need and checking in with others about what they might need. um I love that idea of not assuming that we know, but standing a lot from a place of curiosity, and just you know sitting down with the pain, which is a very hard thing to do. But really, there's nothing that we can do to fix it.
Mhm.
So sometimes people might be confused about how they can be the best helpers, and really the best help is just the check-in, the sharing with others that you care and that you're thinking of them, and then
Mhm.
you can feel the pain, and doing little things for them. Um, Mostly being there and talking and helping them process or not, just giving them the space to not talk about it or to not think about it. Sometimes like every single person is so different and so unique. So I think it's important that we just go with the flow. Right.
Yeah. And I think, and I think on this topic too, the idea that, like I said, we're all trying to find our place in it. And sometimes that's confusing, like you said, Gisela, to feeling lost, like what should I be doing? What should I be feeling? And then there's, and the closer you are to the event, probably the more intense this feeling of survivor guilt is too, right? Like, why did this happen there? What about the festival I was at the other weekend? It could have been there, right? Which of course creates a lot of anxiety for us. But why me? And that's something that it brings up as well. Why not me? Right. And so we're also struggling with some of that as a community and as individuals, and that sense of, everybody here, has survived this, right? Like, I mean, and some people were closer than others, but it can make you have this odd feeling of almost feeling like, am I somehow responsible? What am I responsible for? And this is why we really wanted, like when Nikki and I first started talking about hosting this webinar, we really wanted it to be an honest conversation. We didn't want it to just be, oh, we're the therapists. Here we're telling you 10 tips to deal with, grief. Like, we really wanted it to be an honest conversation. And so, and that's what we're committed to. So that means sometimes talking about the difficult thing and the struggles that we're having. And I want to also make sure that, because I really want to get this across too, we just in the sense of, everybody that's attending today has obviously been impacted by this, or you wouldn't be spending the time with us today. But of course, we know the Filipino community and the people, the organizers, and the people that were at the event are so deeply impacted. And they have, but when you talk about asking what people need, and I just want to share with this community today that one of the things that the Filipino community has let us know is that they don't want us to be referring it to as the Lapu-Lapu Festival tragedy. And I'm just saying that now in order to clarify it, because they don't want that to be associated, to be violence and all this pain to be associated with something that is a beautiful and important part of their culture. And I really want to support them in that, which is why I've chosen to share this with the community today and to make sure that we are finding the right and respectful words to name the event and to describe it and the feelings. And so I just wanted to share that because I think that's something that could be helpful for everybody involved to know that out of respect for the Filipino community, we really want to maintain that celebration of the pieces of their culture that are important to them, and we don't want it sullied with violence and pain. That was something separate, and it wasn't about, the value and the wonderful things within that were being celebrated that day. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Alyson. I would like to, I've got, Marcy has raised her hand.
Yeah, just before we move on, there's some questions in the chat that I think are really interesting and I wanted to bring forth relevant to this section of your presentation. And one of them is asking if you're able to speak to maladaptive grief responses and what those might be looking like right now and how people can observe them. So that's one question. And then the second question that's interesting is people would like to know, like, is it okay to take a break from work right now? Like when you've got your professional responsibilities and you're dealing with this form of collective grief, it's hard for people to understand when they can take a break to take care of themselves.
Yeah, it's a hard one to know, and everybody's got to find what their own threshold is, right? But if that's speaking loud to you, listen to it. For some people, they can find joy and relief in work, right? Like it's like it just gives them that sense of I'm doing something and this feels good because I'm not just thinking and dwelling on something or these feelings, right? But if you're in a position where you can't even perform, or you're not able to concentrate and do those things, then it's important that you do take a break to do some self-care so that you can come back and be more effective, right? Like just pushing yourself through something like that isn't necessarily going to help you, and it's certainly not going to help, maybe the people that you're connected with or serving as well. And for people that are helpers as well, we really have to, it always goes back to the oxygen mask in the plane, right? We have to take that oxygen ourselves so we can help others. So please don't feel bad in any way if you're struggling with that. And if there's something you're really kind of wondering about, find somebody you trust to kind of bounce it off of, to say, does this feel like reasonable that I just need to take the rest of the week off? Like, find that people that understand the context of your world and that you trust, and they will help you with that. And the maladaptive grief, Gisela, did you want to talk to that a little bit?
I wanted to add that even if you're taking time off work to process what has happened, I think that it's important that we mention that grief, yes, it needs a space, but it doesn't need all the space, right? So you can go home and rest and give yourself permission to, take some time to process what's happened, but you also have to give yourself permission to shift gears. Um, Towards maybe doing something lighter, taking a walk, playing with your kids, petting your dog, being in nature, and acknowledging that having a break doesn't really dishonor the grief or the pain, but they just help you stay regulated and be able to recharge that energy to later go back to being functional. Um, as per the question about how people, if there is a better way to call it, I think that for us as DPS volunteers, I know a lot of the emails um, the subject is the April 26th attack or the April 26th tragedy instead of associating it directly with the festival. So, because as a community, we all know that this past weekend has been horrific. So, yeah, so that might be an alternate way of referring to it.
Thank you.
Never wanting to cut anyone off here. So, but I do know that I'm assuming people would definitely love to hear possible coping strategies. And I know, Gisela, what you said is actually so meaningful, giving yourself permission to not be in it all the time. Can you think or bring forward possibly other strategies for people to help manage overwhelming emotions or the anxiety that's associated?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, those are the things where we want to, there's a lot of things that there's no easy answer. And again, we keep saying for different people, it's different, but, connection can be helpful, right? Not talking about it and having connection can be helpful. And it really is sometimes those opportunities to take action. And that action is, the antidote of anxiety, right? Like doing something can make us feel better. And that can be something from going out in your garden and gardening, right? To hosting a webinar, right? To volunteering in some way. And also, participating in some sort of public memorial or going, we've all seen the pictures now of the flowers and the things that are laid out, right? Like for a lot of people, that's healing to be able to go and take an action and take those flowers and put them there and feel that they are honoring the people that have been so hurt in this process, right? So wherever we can take an action, it's, and it can be walking in the woods. For me, that's one of my things is just to be on my own and quiet and going for a walk. And so finding those sort of things that are going to work for us, that, going back to our favorite things, listening to our music, listening to each other, and having some quiet time, but also having some time where we feel connected and part of something that we feel we belong to. Gisela, did you have anything?
It's coping strategies are so personal. I think that beyond all the activities that we can think of that really help you recharge, it's also about maybe also saying hard no's, setting boundaries about whether I want to actually participate or not, or talk about it or not, or see family or not. Like saying no at this time is I know it's very hard sometimes, but it's very important that you're actively taking care of yourself and protecting yourself, as well as protecting others. And here I want to just also add that there's different ways of coping depending on the age, because kids and youth and adults, we all process grief in very different ways. So what can help an adult might not be very helpful for a child. Like, for example, I as an adult might want to talk about it with my family, but a child hearing details that might be way too much for them, very overwhelming, might not be the best way. But then children need to play. Children need to also have breaks from that. So I think that maybe, is it okay, Alyson, to switch into maybe how we
Yeah.
can support people of different ages?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. I'm sorry, I can hear that there's somebody in the neighborhood with a saw out there, so I apologize for any background noise. But maybe I could speak a little bit to supporting, children and teens and at this point. And, this, both Gisela and I work with families, we work with children, we work with teens, and this is something that's close to both of our hearts, right? And so, with children, and of course, it's what's age appropriate, right, is going to be important. I saw somebody in the comments made an excellent comment. Thank you for it, where you said that sometimes for teens in particular, it can be very hard to talk about things. So doing a parallel activity with them can be very helpful, right? So, one of the things I always say is do talk to your children, find out how much they know, find out what they're hearing, find out what their peers are talking to them about. And, when you get that sense of what they do know, sometimes we need to fill in the gaps. Sometimes we need to correct information because sometimes the information is just wrong. And so we need to give more information, and again, I said, information helps with anxiety. It helps alleviate it, but too much information can overwhelm us. So we kind of want to get a sense of what they do know. The things I always say, and especially with children, and this is hard, and as parents, or if there's children that you're connected with, aunt, uncle, neighbor, grandchildren, you don't want to see them suffer, right? But this is the real world. There is suffering in the real world, and we can't just put them in a bubble. We have to actually prepare them. And as hard as that is, we have to walk them through what that's like, right? And the thing that makes them, I apologize for this noise in the background, but the thing that makes them, that helps us do that is we stay in the lead. And when we are in the lead, whether we have a teenager or a young child, that child can start to rest and to feel like, okay, I'm taken care of here. Oh, good. I'm glad you can't hear it. But so, I talk to kids that denying a bad thing doesn't make it better. It just doesn't. Being honest about it and saying bad things do happen in this world. People do get hurt, but as humans, we are amazingly resilient and we can bounce back. Right. And that's part of what we want to talk about today too, is our resiliency. It is everybody in life is going to get knocked down. You're not going to get through life without getting knocked down. And the thing about resiliency is it's a lived experience. You can't give resiliency to your children. You have to be beside them and leading them as they become resilient.
Can I
So,
ask you something in that,
yes,
Allison, for a minute? Because it's coming up a lot, and especially with kids,
yeah,
kids and adults, is social media,
right.
images, news. And I know you talked about it, but kids aren't necessarily filtering that out. So
No,
how does someone manage that when that's a platform where they're communicating with their people and
yeah.
it's all over?
Yeah. And that's the thing where we have to encourage our children, and that's sometimes to get them away from that. Like, we understand it. We're on social media ourselves, right? So, I mean, it's not about just shutting it down. It is part of the way that we communicate in this world now, and it's part of the way young people communicate. But, we want to pull them back into having actual conversations with us and us being able to gauge it and be there. And not try to trick them away from it, to be honest with them about why we think all of us should put our phone away right now, right? Because we want to have a family conversation, or I want to go for a walk with you and I want to just be with you, right? And, children, especially when they're hurting, they actually don't resist that much. They want the connection. They want that leadership from you, right? So acknowledging them that they're going to want to seek information in that way, and helping them understand the thing I was talking about when the anxiety is going up. It's definitely time to take a step back from it, right? So, this is we want to keep checking in with them. And of course, the conversations we have with them are going to be based on, if they're 5 or 15, are very different kind of conversations. And I always say sometimes we have to turn away from that stuff, the social media, the TV, and turn towards each other. And we do want to give them an explanation. But by giving them an explanation, we also have to say, we're challenged because we're trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
And it doesn't.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
And so it's very hard for us to try to make sense to our young people with something that we are grappling with and can't make sense of. But they do need an explanation. They do need to understand. Most children now are aware, but initially when it first happened, they needed to know. They needed to know what happened, that, there was a festival and men drove into it, and, people were hurt and some people were killed. And even young children need to know that, because it is the truth. And this is our world, right? But they also need to know that there's helpers there, and there were helpers there. There were amazing people that were there, keeping everybody else safe, right? And these are things that, like, a 5-year-old can be comforted with in a way that you express to a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, that, Mr. Rogers always said, look to the helpers, right? And he was right. Look to the helpers. And there are so many helpers out there. And that's the part that we want to accentuate, is that even when bad things happen, there's so much good to counteract that. And so, having that conversation also with your children, rely on the structure. There's been something big, there's been big conversations, but there's immense relief for young people when they get back into the structure. They get back into school, they get back into their sports activities, they get back into their, I've got to study for this exam, or I got to get that paper in, right? So the structure is our friend. So although we want to take some time out and definitely treat this in a way that's honoring, to those impacted and affected, we also want to get them back into the structure. And, I always say, when we're faced with the worst of situations, we need to turn to the best. And so remind them of what's the best, and remind them of the people that are there helping. And so, yeah, it's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
It's not just one conversation.
Gisela, and
I
then I
think that,
have, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think that for kids, one thing to pay attention to is that even though you might not be talking about it, that kids play, and kids will be playing about this if they have been exposed to it through the news, through like they heard conversations or other kids were talking about it at school. So I think it's a good idea to also pay attention to how our kids are playing, because that's kind of the narrative
Yeah.
that they are having. And the good thing about just being close to them is that as adults, we can help to control the narrative a little bit more, right? As Alyson was saying, we can help them see that yes, this was difficult, but look at everything good that is coming out of this. Like look at how we're staying strong, how the community is supporting each other. Like there's everyone has been like so eager to help and to be present and in different ways. So um, sometimes when these senseless things happen, kids are wondering, well, how is it that how is it that this is not going to happen again? Like, mommy, is it happening again then? Um, and the reality is it's horrific. We don't know. But what we do know is that when something tragic happens, look at how our community responds. Look at everything that has been put in place, and how you can also support um, other people around you. And one thing that I think it's important also for teenagers is the social action, because teenagers, it's a different way youth processes, like the emotions are intense and they have this huge capacity for empathy. So at the same time, they can get like even more overwhelmed. Um, and one way to help them cope with that sense of overwhelm is help them put feelings into social actions. Like maybe it's important that you and your friends gather and like maybe do something about it. You can be advertisers for a GoFundMe campaign, or you can all collect different items, or you can all go and put flowers, because youth are more ready to make
Yeah.
that leap,
Yeah.
right? So
And Gisela, I noticed it just came up on the comments that that the premier has declared tomorrow to be a day of remembrance, and that might be a great opportunity,
yeah.
especially with youth and children. You know, we heal through ritual. We need ritual, right? So, and some people, there may be a gathering. I think they're talking about finding a gathering. I'm not sure when it is. I can't speak to that, but you know, if it is a day of remembrance tomorrow, maybe we find ways, you know, maybe we plant a flower, right? Like especially with, you know, young children, like maybe like you're talking about with teens, like, you know, starting the GoFund or something social action, which really helps teens a lot, right? And for younger children, that idea of doing something with their hands and planting a flower or something in remembrance of the people, right? And so that's part of moving grief. You know, grief becomes very problematic when it's stuck, right? It's natural. It's actually very healthy. It's very okay. It's when it's stuck that it becomes kind of problematic. So if we have something, a ritual that helps us move grief, which is why we have gatherings and celebrations of life and, you know, vigils and, you know, because we need that, those rituals because they do help us move and help us heal.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I have a question that's come up, but then I actually would like to come back to talk about the importance of community and healing as well. But I think, how do we explain mental health issues
Yeah.
with kids? Did you see that question?
No, I
Basically,
didn't, but
my kids have been asking why the suspect did
yeah,
this, and
yeah,
there's a need for transparency with your
yeah.
kids. Yeah.
I really wanted to speak to that too. I think it's a really important topic and a really important, you know, we're still figuring out the story, right? Like, you know, when this first happened, we didn't really understand and we didn't know a whole lot about the person that had driven into the people yet. And we're getting more of that backstory now, and we understand that there were mental health concerns, right? And, you know, so this is one of the hard things too, is we do need to have conversations about mental health, and we don't want to create situations in which we're further stigmatizing people, or my concern, creating additional barriers for people to get service. Because if they feel I have this, you know, mental health issue, and if people know about it, they're going to think I could do something like that. They're not going to go and get the help that they need. And so I don't want there to be barriers. I want us to be able to have those honest conversations about this, right? And so, you know, it's really important to know that, first of all, everybody in their lifetime is going to struggle with some sort of mental health issue. It's the same thing as us physically. We're going to struggle with some physical issue. We're all going to either be overstressed, overwhelmed, or some people might have chronic mental health issues, right? But we all struggle in some way, you know? So first of all, I want to just normalize mental health issues as normal, right? Now, like I said, there are some that are chronic and there's some that are more challenging, certainly, to live with, right? And in this situation, as we're, you know, uncovering things, there's still things we don't always understand, but not every mental health issue, you know, has these sort of things that go with it. And we can have situations where people are being treated, but something can happen, right? And especially if there is some sort of break from reality, with some conditions that can occur. But having a mental health issue and even having a break from reality does not mean you're going to be violent, right? And so we have to be very careful, conscious, and caring about how we approach this issue. Because if we just come down with a hammer on it, I'm worried that people are going to hide it, and people are not going to welcome treatment, right? Obviously, we need more resources to support our mental health system. We need more resources to support our health system, period. You know, so anything we can increase in that way, that's going to be a good thing. But, you know, it's natural to want to be angry, and it's okay to feel angry. But I also don't want us to just, you know, oppress all of this and just go into blame in a way that's going to be destructive for us. I want us to be able to be open-hearted, honest, and constructive. Yeah. Gisela, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I think the answers a lot depend on the age of the person that is asking. Today I had my 7-year-old asking me like, "Mommy, why did he do that?" Um, and yeah, the explanation is short, is more like the language has to be different. I think that teens have the capacity to understand more of the issues concerning mental health, as you said. Um, they do have also teens have the capacity to be more open-minded and make that they're really good advocates to make that distinction and prevent stigmatizing. So providing them with information, I think, is really key.
Right.
While as with little ones, it's more about like, yeah, you never know if a person is suffering. You never know what they might be thinking. So that's why it's important to, that you're always paying attention to how people around you are doing. Just it's important for you to care in your school, care in your family, care with your friends, and see them, right? So I think it's different with the ages, but across all populations, I think it's important that we are making sure that we connect, that we are seeing others.
Yeah. And the mental health conversation is an ongoing conversation. And understand some people are more comfortable discussing it, some cultures are more comfortable discussing it, and so, all we can do, like I said, is continue to in the most respectful manner that we can, try to look for solutions and understand that, you know, there are some pieces in life maybe we won't ever fully understand. Remember, I said we're trying to make sense of some things that just don't make sense, right? Like why this exactly happened. So the best we can do is, explain to our people, our children, that we understand that there were mental health issues in this situation, but please don't think that if you're struggling with mental health that it's going to equal you being violent or somebody being violent, because that is actually, the statistics on that are very, very low, right? And so also we don't want to, just be living in fear of those things, right? Yeah.
For how long? For how long are we living like this, right? Because I think that it's important to recognize that grief takes time. Um, and again, at different ages, we just have to pay attention. It makes sense that right now we're all angry and sad and numb and feeling different emotions, and we will be feeling like this for a while. This is just the beginning, the first stage of the grief process, but also paying attention on how people are doing with their own mental health along the way, like in a few weeks and in a few months, and seeing if we're continuing. Um, I, I I read once that in my work with grief that you don't get out of grief. You learn how to grow around it. You just grief doesn't really just leave you, but you grow. So we have to also pay attention to see if we're growing around it, if we are processing it better.
Mhm.
You talked earlier on about being stuck in grief, and I think there are some people that are wondering what that really means, and then also how you manage real anger or rage around this.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, again, and like anger, like I said, natural emotion, right? And I mean, and we want to look, when we're angry, we often want to look to blame or to, and there's things we can look at that maybe could have been done differently or whatever in this situation. But rather than just go into blame and just that rage, like you're talking about, let's look about how we can learn. What are the things we can do in the future to protect public safety in situations like, these things? What can we learn? And it doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong. I'm not talking about the person who's, responsible for this, but I'm talking about all this situation because people, most people are out there trying to do their best in a situation, right? And so, we just want to look for, okay, what can we learn here? And if we can move that into solution, that's one of the things about anger. Anger is powerful and it's movement oriented. It gives us energy, right? So if we take some of that and we try to make positive changes with it, we can move it into a constructive way. But if we just fall into like outrage and rage and blame, that doesn't tend to be very constructive for a society. It's understandable, but it's not necessarily constructive. So, although natural feelings, let's try to look for ways to take this energy and take this momentum and do positive things, whether it be around supporting public safety, around assisting and helping with mental health issues, right? Whether it be, giving attention to the first responders and the people that are there doing a lot of the work. Like, let's take this energy and move it towards something that can help others, because that's healing. Mhm.
Gisela? The,
I I was um I was just thinking about the importance of, again, like we started talking this talk with community, and I think there's different types of healing as a community that we can do. Um, but it all starts with checking in and talking and processing and giving ourselves time. Um, it really will take time.
It will take time. And one of the things that because I know our time, talking about time, is moving on too. And we've touched on it, but you know, I'm so deeply, deeply grateful for the helpers and the first responders and the teachers and the counselors and the police, of course, and the ambulance and the firefighters and um, you know, just the people that put themselves out helping others. And although we're not going to be able to have a fulsome conversation about that today, I know BCACC is thinking about ways they can support those helpers as well, because they are the best of us, right? And we really want to acknowledge them, and we really want to acknowledge the costs of being a helper too, right? And whether you're a therapist and you're having, your own reaction to some of the things you're hearing, but you're having to hold space for somebody else, or whether you're the person that's right in there dealing with it and trying to save that life, right? So, or whether the person that has to deal with what happens if you can't save the life, right? So, our medical people, all those doctors and nurses and medical professionals that worked so hard and are still working hard to save those lives. We want to take that moment and we really want to treat those people well. And we want to give them opportunities to be supported as well, because the helpers need help too. And so I do know that BCACC is looking at how we can deepen our support for them too. So I just wanted to take that moment that we look to them. It does make us feel better. It makes our children feel better. It makes our teens even feel better. But we also want to look at ways that we can help them feel better too.
Yeah.
Something I'd love to interject, because I know there's a lot going on in the chat. I couldn't see much of it, but this conversation is purely one conversation, and it's not the everything. And so what I want we felt it was so important to just bring a conversation to this moment, but there's lots of other efforts that are going on. And just as an association, we're looking at how we can connect helpers with people in many different ways. So don't think that this is a one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for that, right? That's where we are in this together, and remember we were talking about, taking action makes us feel better, and so I just keep encouraging people to look at what's the action, and your action doesn't have to be the same as somebody else's action. You don't have to do the thing that somebody else does to feel better, right? Like I said, it could be walking with your 5-year-old to go plant in the garden tomorrow, as that's an action, right? It could be, supporting a first responder with very fast support for them psychologically as well. It could be whatever you're doing to help and take an action. And so never think my action's not big enough. It is, right? And but it is about, like I said, we don't want grief, we don't want our anger, we don't want things to get stuck. Movement is what it's all about. Allowing things to move is what it's all about. And so looking for those ways that we can do that personally, as a community, for us as a profession, for us with our association, ways that we can help keeping things move. Very important.
And in the long term.
And in the long term, not just, that's
Yeah.
a very good point.
Yeah, because a lot of support is given to everyone involved or everyone affected in the beginning. But then when you feel the most lonely is once everything settles and people go back to their routine. So just little check-ins on how we're doing, just thinking about you, your presence, your kindness, is in the long term is very helpful.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. And yeah, we don't want it just to be, this elevated experience right now, and then we, drop the ball. And, of course, other things are going to come. It's okay to keep moving, but we want to take the learning with us. We want to take the compassion with us, and we want to keep checking in with people.
I have one question here, and then I'd love to just get some final thoughts from both of you. And we have resources that we are assembling as an association that are going to be shared with this recording. The one question is, can you take one moment to address what disenfranchised grief is, how to watch for it, and what those that aren't counselors and don't know is for people who aren't counselors to understand?
Gisela, do you have anything on that?
I'll jump into what you have to say.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think we talked about maladaptive, grief or, disenfranchised grief, right? I mean, it's in many ways, it's the stuck grief that isn't moving, right? And it's the grief that's not being owned and is being deflected elsewhere, right? And so, often if we are struggling, if our behaviors are changing or we're seeing other people's behaviors change from their norm, not just, I'm upset because this bad thing happened, that's the kind of stuff. And that's where I really encourage then. I mean, it's such a big topic, but I really encourage if you feel like you're struggling with that or somebody you love or care about is struggling with that, that's a great time to bring in, seek some support, some counseling, right? To even just to check in with yourself and see, is something stuck in with me, right? So it's a big topic because, like I said, the key is to keep things moving, and when they're stuck, it doesn't tend to go well. So we want to find strategies, and sometimes talking to somebody who is a professional can help if you are stuck.
I will add to that an image. So, how I explain to my clients grief is tsunamis. So, when a tragedy happens and a loss happens, you think about the wave of in a tsunami. It's huge, it's dirty, it's destructive, it's terrifying, and it just wrecks everything. Your life is just upside down, it wrecks everything. But with time, the tsunami is just a one event, and with time, the waves are supposed to look more as the waves in the ocean. They can still be high. They can still be, grief comes in waves. So there's one wave and you recover, and there's another wave and you recover. But the waves are less tumultuous and less, they are more manageable with time, right? And there's not so many coming to destroy everything, and you have to redo again. And then once you continue moving in the grief process, then waves feel a little bit more manageable. You're able to get this board or this floaty to stay afloat, and that's how you know that you're doing better. But if, like, after months you still feel the tsunamis, then it's time to, as Alyson said, look for help, look for
Yeah.
professional help.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think that's an excellent metaphor. And I know our time is up, and we really want to honor people's time. And I just want to leave people with with that part that we are resilient. Humans are they're amazing. We're amazing. We are resilient creatures, and we want to pull on that during these difficult times. We want to trust it. We want to nurture it. But remember, the only way we do all of that is that we have to go through something. So, we're all building our resiliency through these conversations. We're building resiliency in our children and our youth. We're building resiliency as a community, right? We're building resiliency as humanity. So I just want to leave you on that note, right? That we are pretty amazing in so many ways, and we are a community, and we can turn to each other and support each other
With a lot of gratitude.
with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm grateful for everybody that came today. I'm grateful for everybody that's helping. And I just, I'm grateful that you all allowed me to contribute, Gisela, Nikki, Marcy, to contribute today, because that's all part of our healing too. So I thank you to all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. And thank you, every single person that's on the call. I hope that we can send you off into this afternoon with something taken from this conversation. So have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.